Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Spotlight series presented by the Black Podcasters Association, powered by Afros and Audio. My name is Corey Gums, and I'm the founder as well as your host. If this is your first time checking us out, this is a series where we shine a spotlight on a Black podcast creative or professional from our online community. And excuse me, before we introduce our guest for today, please make sure you like this episode, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to tap the notification bell so that you can know when we bring you new content. And lastly, in honor of Women's History Month, and thanks to the sponsorship of the Women of Color Podcasters community, for a limited time, you can get your first month of membership to the Black Podcasters Association.com for free. So make sure you join today and check out WOCpodcasters.co to learn more about their wonderful community committed to helping women of color accomplish their podcasting goals. Excuse me. And now that we got all of that out the way, today we would like to welcome Sambaza, the host of the Sambaza Podcast. Sambaza is trying to bridge the gap between I always mess up this word, the diaspora and his home, Kenya, through entertaining and insightful conversations while using humor and awareness towards social issues. So thank you, Sambaza, for being here. You know, you've been a member of the group for a long time. I'm excited to have you. Been waiting for us to sit down and have a real conversation. So thank you for being here, bro.
Oh, thank you, man. I'm glad to be here. Finally, I get to be on the hot seat, your hot seat for a minute. And you know how many times I've heard that thing trying to bridge the gap with diaspora and what have you? It's been so many times. I'm like, okay, I hear it here over and over again. But I am glad to be on the show. And hey, it's good to link up. And a happy New Year to you.
Same
I
to
know we
you.
haven't talked about the New Year. Everything going good?
Everything's
Coronavirus.
going well. You know, we moved from Facebook to the private communities, and it's been going
Yeah.
very well. And you guys have it's been a pleasure just seeing us, everybody coming together and growing and supporting and just moving everything forward.
Yeah, actually, it was this has been a very good engagement. Starting from the Facebook page when we started off, and then actually not even Facebook. We started off from what do you call it? Not Green Room.
Oh,
What's this?
Clubhouse.
Clubhouse. Yes, from
Yeah.
Clubhouse, Afro Audios, and then now linked up, and then Facebook. Then next thing you know, we're here. I mean, it's been a journey. I love it. I'm loving it so much, and I've met a whole bunch of people. But anyway, it's not about them, right? Today's about me, right?
It's all about you today. Yeah. It's all about you and your show.
All right. Well, Sambaza Podcast. I'm Sambaza, the host of Sambaza Podcast. And I started off Sambaza Podcast just to kind of have fun. I got tired of, posting on Facebook. And I said, well, let me just get along and start doing something, on video. Then I realized that I was shy. I do have a case of imposter syndrome, which I'm battling today. And what I like to tell people is I with the imposter syndrome, it is there. I have it. I've conquered it. But one great thing that people don't know, and I'm telling you right now, is through talking to a whole bunch of people on my podcast, I've been able to overcome that just by the things that they've told me inadvertently. And I'm getting there. I'm getting better. So shout outs to all the people who have come to my show. And I just realized I have 75 episodes put up, almost up to 100. But
Congrats.
going back to where it started, okay?
Yeah.
So, um, right before right after the pandemic started, and I was sitting one day, and I had already bought a Yeti, and I had actually downloaded Anchor. For some odd reason, I had downloaded Anchor on my phone, and I just left it there. 3 months later, I was like, wait, let me start something. So when I looked at it and I said, oh, Anchor is free. Let me use Anchor. So that's how I started my podcast off of Anchor. I was battling within doing it as a Swahili podcast. Then I realized my strength in Swahili had diminished a lot. Swahili is my native tongue that I speak in Kenya. Everyone in Kenya speaks Swahili. That's like the everybody else, and then you have your own sub tribes where you speak your own languages. But I realized I wasn't so good at it as I was before, so I decided to do it English. And then I had to choose whether it's going to be me talking on my own or it's going to be talking to somebody. So I did a couple of episodes, so I put them up there and showed them to my wife, and my wife was like, "Nah, nah, this ain't gonna work." So I decided, let me do the Corona series, and this is where everything changed. Corona series was whereby I interviewed people from all over the world who are my friends, and they were telling me the experiences of how Corona is, the way it started and to where they were. And incidentally, I'm going back to doing a recap of how it went and the experiences and what they think about life going forward. Because some of them gave me like profound stories of their lives. And I remember this one person who had actually contracted Corona and spoke to me about it. His name was Karanja. And he went into this idea of how we need to be simple. You know, we accumulate a lot of things. And at that point, when you actually contract it, you start thinking about your life, then you kind of stop and realize, you know, you might amass a lot of things, but they don't make any sense at that point when you have Corona. You're actually staring at at that moment, you know, you were staring at your end of your life because there was nothing, you couldn't do anything, you did not know what you were going to get into. So that's how I can say the podcast got shaped. And I have a sister in podcast who's shout outs to, what do you call her, a random nobody. If you guys get a chance to listen to, go and listen to her. She is from New York, and she always has this phrase, translation, blah blah blah. And she's the one who went and gave me a shout out. First person that ever gave me a shout out and told me, hey, this is what this guy is doing on his podcast, and he covers the whole world. And when he does his stories, they cover from the diaspora and then America itself. So then I was like, oh, wow. So this is what I can do. So from then on, I call her my sister in podcasting. And every time I get a chance to talk to her, we kind of chat about it. And she is the one that made me now bring out the Sambaza podcast like the way it is. So Sambaza podcast now became what we call a series podcast. I'd find topics, and then I'd start interviewing people from America, even Mexico, the Americas. Let's say the Americas, right, north and south, and then you'd go to Europe and the rest of the world, and then kind of take a focus also in the Africa itself and the Kenya. If I find somebody from, I usually like to find people around Africa. I don't like to focus on Kenya. And I think Clubhouse has helped me find out a lot more people than just sticking into Kenya itself. So that is what Sambaza Podcast is all about. And we have a lot of topics that we get into. So you got any questions for me? I see
No,
you.
that's dope.
Hey.
You mentioned random nobody, and somebody had recommended her. So recently on our Twitter feed, I started a pod chaser list for Black women in podcasting, and somebody recommended her. So that this is the second time in like the past 4 days that I've heard that name. So definitely going to check her out and see what's going on with her podcast. And she's out here in New York City, so
Oh, yeah.
support my fellow New York City brethren. No, I mean
she has a side hustle also with the cakes. She makes some cakes. What do you call it? Pudding cakes?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's doing that now, but you know, it's always good to have that in the back pocket for those celebrations. I don't
Right.
do all that stuff, but you know, I know people who do. And I know Bethany's watching. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Oh,
We got an event coming up that we're probably gonna be doing in August. So
okay.
that's, I mean, you beat me to a lot of my questions. I usually start this off with, hey, you know, how did you get into podcasting? So I know for me, you've engaged in a lot of our clubhouse chats that we used to do. And you always brought a different perspective. Since you started your podcast, what is like, is there like one thing or a number of things that you've learned about yourself since you've done that? I know you talked about imposter syndrome, and you know, we all go through it. I had a little bout of it earlier today when I was working on something, and it's like, oh, what am I doing? Besides that, have you learned anything else about yourself?
Interviewing me?
Huh?
Interviewing me? You getting imposter syndrome?
No, not you. I was working on a project earlier that, you know, and I'm like, oh man, do I know what I'm doing? So, you know, it
Yeah.
hits you, you know?
Yeah, I mean, well, we can talk about imposter syndrome for a little bit. I get this thing where when I was starting to interview people, you're no one knows you, and I still kind of like the idea, and kind of I'm battling with both the two. That's why I always keep Sambaza on the forefront. There's always Sambaza, and there's Sambaza the picture. Like when you go to my podcast information, you pretty much see the icon.
Right.
So I want people to know Sambaza as Sambaza, know Sambaza the podcast, all right? Until I come up and you see my name or you see me, then you go like, oh yeah, that's the dude, Sambaza, host of the Sambaza podcast. So for the last 1 year and a half, let me say, I've been trying to push the Sambaza icon and Sambaza the brand as it is. Yeah, Sambaza the brand, not me, um, as the face of the podcast. So it's been, like I can say, it's been going on well, and that has helped me kind of get my way in, because people do not know who, they cannot kind of know who Sambaza is. They want to know the podcast. They want to get to the podcast. So when I was getting into asking people to come onto my podcast, I used to kind of feel like, why would they want to come to my podcast?
Right.
Um, who am I? I have only like 5-10 episodes, and here I am, talking to a whole bunch of people. Some of them would be my childhood idols, and I'll go like, wow. I'm talking to these people. They looked like people who would never, want to sit with me and have a talk with me, because it's time. You're taking time off to actually sit with somebody to ask you questions for about 30 minutes or even an hour. Did a lot of them come? Yes. Did a lot of them not come? Yes. But as I interviewed people, like I said, it got better, because I remember one of the interviews. This lady in Kenya, she's an artist, and she's blind, and she actually told me, when somebody stops and doesn't tell you, she's on Instagram, a girl, blind girl. She has a podcast called Blind Girl Manenos. Manenos, it means things in Swahili. So she told me, if somebody says no, think about it as next, next person online. So it's like you have a whole bunch of people lined up next, and that's how you move. And it worked well for my show, because guess what? I do series. So when I'm about to do a series, let's say, for example, I'm going to throw this one out. If I'm going to talk about, let's say, women in power, like Women History Month, right? I'd select 10 women, break them down to five in the diaspora, five in the US, and then I start contacting them and say, hey, I got a podcast, I got this episode going on. I think you'd be the right fit for my show. I send them, emails and tell them, hey, you want to come on, or any communication, sometimes through Instagram or whatever. So out of the five, maybe 3 will say yes, maybe 2 will say yes, and other 3 will say no. But one funny thing is, when you're doing series, it'll run maybe for about a month, and then as you ask them, the people, 2 will say no, some of them will not, 2 will say yes, right? And then 3 will say maybe, like check with me later. And somehow, when you're about to complete the series and you got everything tied down, you got all the questions,
Yep.
and somebody comes up and says, hey, you were doing that podcast, do you mind coming, do you have time for me? So you also have to account for that. So somehow it worked out. So for me, that has given me time to understand people, so I get to enjoy what I'm doing, and also learn that somebody can tell you no right now and change their mind 2 weeks later and come and ask you, hey, are you still doing it? Or like maybe just keep quiet, and you're like, okay, they're not interested, and later on they're like, hey dude, are you still on for that thing? And you go on. So
Yeah.
that has helped me with my imposter syndrome.
I think the advice of no, then next. I mean, it, like, myself as an entrepreneur, you learn to start doing that kind of thing, right? You have a client, they tell you no, okay, you can't dwell on that. And I learned that from sports too. You strike out, you give up a touchdown or whatever. When I used to play football and baseball, next time up, you got to just let that go, and you got to move on to the next person. And I think when I started doing this series, I had to get used to that next part. What the people not, even though it was real popular in the group when we were on Facebook and people were signing up, I was kind of like, where are the people who I really wanted to, who I expected to sign up? And they did it. And I was like, okay, well, you feel a certain way about it. And then you're like, nah, I just got to move on to what's here. And as each show went on, it got easier and easier for me because it was just like, okay, this person signed up, and then it's a sense of enthusiasm. Like I'm just waiting for the next person, like whoever it is, I'm all for it. So I think that's great advice for podcasters. Know the next, because that also, especially in the beginning, I find that just interacting with everybody, that can demoralize you when you get a lot of no's, and
Right.
you like you're trying to get your show up and going, and you don't understand why you're getting rejected, or why I know somebody's not responding, or why they can't do it right now. And I think it's important for people to understand that people have schedules. Sometimes people want to do like what you say. They couple weeks later, they want to see what you're doing. They want to make sure that they're a proper fit for what you're doing,
Right.
or make sure that they're not wasting their time. So we shouldn't take that stuff personal,
Right.
basically. And that'll help you manage the imposter syndrome, because if you're not taking it personal, then you know it's not about you. It's just the nature of the business or the nature of how things go. So I think that's dope.
Right. Go ahead. You had a question.
No,
Go ahead.
no, no, no.
So another thing, and when you start, you got to put in the work. I'll tell a podcaster, you get to the 1 year, then you're kind of cool at that point. You know how to drive your podcast. You know how to talk to people. Know how to arrange your time, because these are things that we don't do it full time. Some of us do it part time. So you kind of arrange your work around your schedules and everything else, and that's when you realize you are known. A lot of people come to know you, and then you can be able to advertise yourself. You know, learn who actually in the first year you're making your tribe. That is the most important thing. Your tribe. Your tribe is not your family. Podcasters, listen. Your tribe is not
I'm
your
glad
family.
you're bringing this up.
Family? No, 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 no. Just you know,
Say family for Christmas.
yes. you know I have these greens, when I'm talking to my family, my extended family, and I'm like, hey, I got a podcast. I'm so excited. Oh yeah, I did this thing for a podcast. And I said, do you listen to my podcast? They'll be like, yeah, yeah, I did. Then some will just like look back and like, nah, I didn't. So I'm like, oh, I don't know. But to me, I'm like, I just tell them. It's gotten to a point where I tell them, okay, you know what? I got a podcast. This is what I do. And whether you like it or not, I'm going to talk to you about it. You listen, you don't, that's fine. But I told you I got a podcast. So let's leave it at that. There's my tribe, my people who will come to listen to me, who keep listening every single day, every time. When I don't drop a podcast on a Sunday, somebody will ping me on if it doesn't show up on a Wednesday, they'll be like, hey, dude, what's wrong? Is there anything wrong with your podcast? Or if I make something wrong with my podcast, it'd be like, hey, something went wrong with your podcast. Now, those are the people who you call your tribe. Keep those. That's now your family, your
Right.
podcasting family,
Right.
and yeah, they come in all shapes and sizes. You can't say, oh, I'm going to get these kind of people to be on my podcast, or my family is going to occupy 70% of my podcast. No, it's going to be anybody who will listen to you. And if you talking to them and you're genuine and you're giving them the right information and they like the information, hey, that's what's up. They'll love your show.
See, this is the kind of gems you used to drop on the Clubhouse chat. So I really appreciate. That's why I miss talking to you. But for me personally, when you came into the group, you and a couple of other members, predominantly the group was Black Americans, with a sprinkle of people from other countries that really weren't active, and you were like one of the first most active people from with a background from another country. And and I've talked to you about this several times, like and then you did the presentation at the last Afros and Audio Festival about bridging the gap with the Africa and America. And it was, for me, it was like, when I started the group and I was working in the group, I didn't think about outside of America, right? You're here, you're thinking about where you're at and the people who you have there. And when you came, it was like, hold up, there's a whole bigger world out there, because you hear the statistics, oh, so in America, it's just starting to open up in other countries and stuff. How has that been for you, being here in America, representing both your home, your original home, and your new home in the podcasting space, and the growth of podcasting in Africa? Because I think this is very important for us to really understand that especially a lot of Black Americans who are looking to get into this space here, that it's not just here. You have, your cousins overseas who are also watching us and seeing and learning from us because we've been doing it. How has that been?
It's tough. I'll it's this is actually a loaded question, but
Oh,
when we're talking on the podcast, we kind of have to be like on a conference. We are being very diplomatic,
mhm.
but I'll be candid. It is hard. Like Corey, um, you as a podcaster, you're an African American podcaster. When you talk you're comfortable here, and everyone knows you here. This is home, so you've amassed every opportunity over here, right?
Mhm.
And you still have a lot of opportunity over here. And then when you're going into the rest of the world, you're coming from a base here. Now, look at me, for example. I left Kenya and I'm here in the US. I'm like in the middle. I'm picking up a base from the an African American base, and then I have to pick up from my Kenyan base or African base. Now I'm sitting in the middle trying to merge the two.
Right.
It is really hard because they don't know me, and I don't want to use y'all, but the African Americans don't know me. However, after staying here for long, that's why that I've kind of coined it like the cricket effect.
But so hold up, Sambaza. I kind of lost you for a second. Can you just rewind a little bit so people who missed it?
Where do you want me to start off from? Where did you miss?
You started with the y'all joke, and then it kind of like started getting fuzzy a little bit. So,
Okay, so
and
I
how you
want to
caught in the
talk about.
middle? You're like caught in the middle.
Okay, so we're in the middle, right? I'm like in the middle of everything. Um, I have, let's say, half my base is African American, and the other half is Kenyan. I have to merge the two to know who I am, as opposed to you, who has your base here. You grew up here. This is home, and then you're trying to earn. You're trying to earn your spot abroad, right? So
Right.
you're kind of coming from a comfortable, I may say, a comfortable base, but I'm in the middle. I'm here is uh, who will know me. So when I come into your spaces, this I mean African American spaces, um, I have to be vocal. I get ignored, and that's why I was bringing about the cricket effect. Now, the cricket effect, I think you know it, and it happens on both sides. Even you would get the same thing, and this is where bridging the gap is very important, and how you present yourself, and how you have to keep constant with the people around you, and then you create your tribe. Because guess what? I bet you in the first day, if we were in a group of 10 podcasters who are African American, and I came in and I just got into the conversation and say something, it may make sense. I was adding value to the thingy, but at that point, everyone will keep quiet, like for a split second. They'll be like, and then you're thinking, did I say anything wrong? Or is it my accent? Or is it, you're thinking the same way.
Right.
But, it happens with the Africans. If you come into a group of 10 African podcasters and you join in and you start talking, like the way you come and give us a gem about audio and say, hey, if you want to do this thing about audio, you got to do this, blah, 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 blah. Yes, it's a gem. But when you finish, there's going to be that 10-second, maybe 5 to 10 second wait where guys are like, And that's what I call the cricket effect. People don't know you. So what I've come to do is whenever I'm in those spaces, I try to, interact. The more you interact, they ignore you. They'll always keep ignoring, not always, but all the time you'll be ignored. But the more you keep showing up on the stuff, they'll be like, oh, okay, he's been talking some sense. He's been saying some cool things. He's been saying some cool things. Then you earn some type of badge. You earn the card, that card, the card, right? The card that allows you to be part of the group, right?
Right.
And the same thing will happen to us, I'll say Kenyans. Corey, you come in, you talk to us podcasters in Kenya. At first, we'll be like, okay, who's Corey? Then we're like, okay, Corey is coming. Last week came in, gave us this gem about this thing, like that. We keep going on. After 2 weeks, you'll be like, oh, yeah, you one of us. So it's the same thing. You gotta learn. They gotta learn who you are, and then you build up on that. And that's what is bridging the gap. Very hard to do. It even happens in music. When you
Yeah.
look at the artists coming from Africa, it's really hard. So it takes some time. And I'll maybe delve into, if you ever watch interviews, kind of watch an interview with an African coming to a show where they're being interviewed by either an African American person or a white guy on TV. The semantics are different. What we talk about is different. The way your jokes are not gonna be the same as our jokes.
Right.
You see, so you have to find a leveling ground, and once you find that leveling ground, that's when everything works out. And that's what's happened to us. I can say, having hung out for all this time, you guys understand me now. If I come in and say something, you're like, okay, that's Sambaza. Yeah, we've hung out with him, we've talked to him. He's dropped a couple of gems here and there. He said things. Yeah, that's where we create the cohesion, and that's really natural. So bridging the gap is a hard thing to do, but it takes a lot of patience. A lot of patience.
Okay, I'm gonna add on top of that real quick. So I know there's a lot of people from Africa that are now like in Europe, and what I've been learning, the South Pacific, right? That's that area as well. Like, one of my favorite MMA stars, he lives in Australia or New Zealand. I don't know where he's from, but his roots are from Nigeria. But do you find that bridging that gap is also it adds on to that layer, or is it still just African, the Americas and Africa, and then the offshoots that are just in Europe and other places that they're at?
It's everywhere.
Okay.
It's not, it's not like kids. When we're kids, kids don't have, they're like a blank template that's just already starting. They're just filling in.
Right.
You can drop two kids from anywhere, any part of the world. They'll figure out how to talk and how to hang out, because they
Right.
don't have anything. There's no background or having been taught something, that there's a difference or anything like that. To them, this is a kid. They know how to play. They have toys. I have toys, and this is how we go. But as we get older, there's so many things that come to the back of our minds. We've learned a lot. You'd have to know how to speak to people. You can't just say you can just talk how you talk.
Right. Right. We can't use certain words or certain tones or certain hand gestures or whatever. It just gets real complicated.
Right. You can come and say, "Hey, I like spicy. I like spicy food." Now, spicy is hot, in American terms, but in African terms, spicy means you got all the spices, nice spices that taste good. But imagine you bring in a conversation that, and you haven't done your homework. It could go left.
Right. So do you find that your podcasting or your podcast helps to, because I know I study a lot of history, so it's called the loss in translation. Things get lost in translation. Do you feel like your podcast helps to? I don't want to use the term bridge the gap, but I guess I have to bridge that gap and bring people closer, so that there's a mutual understanding on both sides, to make communicating easier.
Yes, it does help people understand to some point, depending on what you're trying to gather out of the information. That's why I like to focus on different people from different places, so that when you hear their experience, like you get an experience from somebody from the UK, and they tell you what they've experienced in their lives and how they've grown up, and then you get somebody from I'll say from Michigan, and they explain to you. It could be the same thing. There'll be some similarities on how things go about. Take, for example, okay, I got this lady I was interviewing called Karina Worldwide. I'm doing a series about people traveling abroad. Then I was kind of wondering, how come she is very comfortable in testing food. Like, she's a foodie and she'll test weird stuff. I mean, you got to go see her Instagram. She does crazy things. Then when I talked about her, and she says, "Oh, I eat goat's head." She went and ate a goat head and then actually ate the eyes. Look, I cannot eat a goat's eye. I've never done that. But she did. So that brought my curiosity as how and why did you do that? Where is this coming from? Only to realize as I was talking to her, she is of Jamaican descent. And in Jamaica,
Go ahead, soup.
found out, yeah,
Yeah,
they have goat soup. So she's used to goat soup and
yeah.
eating goat. So going over to the head, it wasn't so much of a hard thing to do. You see, but how would you have known if you hadn't talked to her or if you hadn't listened to her on the podcast? You know,
Right.
but she eats other stuff though. Some other
I
cooking stuff.
think I might have seen her Instagram. I think it might have came up on my as a suggestion or somebody's. I've seen this girl. She was out there eating all these different things and stuff. I gotta go double check.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not with the ghost stuff. My friend she has a brother-in-law. He had like goat brains, and we had a whole long conversation because he was preparing goat brains and stuff. And it was
I can do goat
he's
brain.
he's from Africa, so it was a whole long conversation between me and him because I was like, nah, I'm not doing that, homie.
She
It
did the
looked
tongue.
like brains.
tongue.
Huh?
She ate the tongue too, the goat tongue, and I was like,
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that. And where I live at, I live in Jamaica, Queens, so we have a lot of West Indian population. So sometimes you go in the stores, you see all the weird stuff. So I'm kind of used to it now. But when I was younger, I used to be like, "Ew, people eat that." But I really like the idea of you being. I know you say it's hard, and I know it can be. Because just as there's a positive side, there's also a negative side, and managing the stereotypes and the biases or the false information on both sides can take its toll too, or can complicate the conversations a little bit too. How do you deal with that, or have you had to deal with that? I shouldn't assume.
yeah, well, again, it's complicated in trying to figure out some things, and again, like I said, you have to have a tribe. Sometimes I ask for people. It's very simple. It could be a simple question, like I was doing the COVID experience from the kids' view. So I already had the kids that I wanted to interviewed them, did the whole thing, done. Then I wanted to get African parents, that's Kenyan parents, to give me the idea of how they found COVID and how they coped or what they thought about their kids, during this pandemic. I got some responses. Now, when I came to the African American side, I did have a little bit of challenge because guess what? The people I asked were from an open chat on Facebook. Yes, they had, kind of bring in your guests. Again, they don't know the podcast. And then I had to go ahead and say, but actually the problem was that I go by my name, my full name's on the Facebook. I don't have the Sambaza podcast does not have his own podcast. It's just linked to my personal page.
Right.
So I tell them, hey, this is the podcast. You want to go check it out and then see if it works as a fit for you. No, I didn't get any responses for that. But I'm like, if I went and came to our group and talked to the people there and found the people the parents who had kids and had COVID, who know me, I can interview them. So it's kind of like you have the family. It's a family thing that you create. Once you create that family, then you kind of, okay, you can get and source people to talk to you.
Right.
But then again, you don't want to talk to the same people over and over again, because then it makes the podcast really, really boring. But yeah, there are difficulties, especially having guests on your show. That's where I have most difficulty. And time. That's another thing. Scheduling time.
Time is always, I don't care what it is. Time is always an issue. It's only 24 hours in a day, and you sleep at least 8 of them away. So,
Right.
But let's move on to your podcast. You mentioned
Right.
several times you do things as a series.
Right.
Now, do you go by seasons, or is it you decide you come up with a theme for a series and that's how you release your episodes? Or is it like, what's the structure of your podcast?
The structure is, at least I put 4 episodes to make a series.
Okay.
That's what I try to do. That has been changing. One thing I also tell podcasters, as you're doing your podcast, try and make some changes here and there and see what it'll do to your podcast. Don't put in and say, it's static, I'm going to do only this. So I could do a series of 4 four episodes, or I could do a series of 6 episodes where I bring in different people. My strategy usually is an episode runs to about 45 minutes. Well, now, see, as I go along, I'm now cutting it down to 30 minutes, making it 2 parts. Because I'm like, okay, if you're going to come and listen to the podcast for 30 minutes and then go away, why don't you come back and listen to the part 2? That means you're coming back again. So I'm having the same people come back over and over again, which means you are listening to the content and in a short amount of time. So I don't take too much of your time. You know, you're going to be quick, listen to it and go, and then come back again next week and pick up on what's remaining. So that's the new strategy I'm going on. So my episodes are going to be kind of longer, a little bit longer. I don't want to dwell on too many subjects for a particular series. So I'll break it down maybe 2. If it's an hour, if I have a talk with an hour, I'll break it down into 2 30 minutes each, and then go to the next person.
Yeah, I heard
So
that strategy.
and then seasons. Oh, you asked about the season. Sorry to cut you off. Seasons is usually the year. August. It's supposed to be July because I did a soft start, but I claim August. Yeah, I claim August. Yeah.
So for you, a year is so from August to August is your season. Because from a consulting side, people always ask me, well, what is a season? And I always explain to them, a season is what you determine. If you even do a season, or you want to label it a season, it's what you determine it to be for yourself. And I think that's important for podcasters to understand too. But you also need, like you mentioned earlier, time. You need to figure out what works best for you in that space, because like we were talking before we came live, or I've been talking to a couple people about it. This series I was doing twice a week. I did 27 episodes, and it was starting to take its toll on me. And now I decided to pivot, and we do it once a week. The only 13 episodes in the season, I broke it down so that I can have more time to myself and the things I need to do, and it's not being occupied. Was it fun? Yeah, it was fun, but it was also taking its toll. I want to talk about your series, your workflow for the series.
Okay.
How do you come up with your idea for a series? Is it something that you just randomly come up with yourself? Is it influence from your listeners, your tribe? Is it something that you may have seen? Like, how do you go about that?
Okay, so I have a team of three people.
Okay.
And they're part of the podcast, but they're on the background. So what we'll do is we'll create a couple of. I'll go in and say, okay, these are the topics that I want to explore, and then we do a roundtable discussion and see which topics are good. Once we get the topics that are good for the year, like the ones that I want to do, then I'll go in and say, okay, these are the topics I want, and who will fit into these topics. So when we get into that, now becomes me doing the runaround, go to search for the people to pick up the topics. And then once I get the topics, I say, okay, fine. No, once I get the interviewers, and I say, okay, here, come on, let's have a conversation and do this. I like to do, like, if it's something, I like to end in a note. I like to end the podcast in such a way that you go with questions, and have something to talk about, and then it becomes like it makes you think. Like you don't just come up, some depending on what part, different podcasts have different themes and have different solutions to what the goals. Right. So if your goal is to make you come in and enjoy yourself and have that one-time effect, have that kind of laugh about things and then go about it, that's fine, that's yours. For mine is like, hey, let's start having a conversation, let's start thinking about something. I did an episode about disciplining kids, and I got to get the African American, how kids are being disciplined in the African American household and how an African household was. So when somebody or a parent listens to this episode and kind of looks at it from a different perspective, they see, okay, fine, yeah, we were disciplined in almost the same kind of way. What is my role for the future of my kids? How am I going to discipline them? If I live in Kenya, how am I going to discipline my kids? If I live in America, how am I going to discipline the kids as a diasporan or as an African American? So it brings about that idea to know that, okay, you're not alone in this world disciplining kids. Yes, we all discipline our kids. We used to discipline our kids in such a different manner. How are we going to discipline our kids for the future, or in the future? Is it going to change, or is it going to still remain the same? So that's what I try to get out of my series.
Okay. You mentioned you have a team. And
Yes.
I think this is where a lot of podcasters get put themselves in bad predicaments, because they feel like they have to do everything themselves and carry and take on the whole world, and then a lot of times you do because you don't have the money or you don't have the resources. How important is it for you to how one, how did you get your team together, and two, how important is it for you and the success of your podcast to have a team?
Well, the team, they come about. The success of the team makes it for me to be able to know how to progress towards my goal as the Sambaza host, right?
Mm-hmm.
They come in the background and tell me, hey, I don't think this episode will work. They veto it and tell me, okay, I think you need to do this, and kind of veer off from that. These are the questions that you want to ask. Um, if your topic is too controversial, they would kind of look at it and say, okay, are we ready to do this, or are we not going to be able to do this? Then say, okay, let's keep it for a while and see what we can do with it. If it's going to change, or if it's something that may change in the future, and then things kind of pair out, then we can bring it onto the show. Yes, we can. So we go about we will have like 10 questions, 10 issues at hand, and then sit down and say, okay, what is going to work? Which one is going to work? How many people are going to be able to bring for this show? And then they say, okay, fine. Then I say, okay, I can bring these people, and then I can work with these people. I can work with that. And then they say, okay, fine, cool. Then we'll go with this. So after that, then I'm ready to start off and do the rest of the stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you so how did your team develop? Was it just I know for some people who are watching, it's just a bunch of people, like friends or a group of coworkers that may say, let's come together and do this, and that's how their team starts? Or was it something that just as you started doing more and more podcasts, maybe somebody came along, or how did your team evolve to what it has become?
It's a friend. It's friends. It's just two friends that would sit in and talk about it. So
Okay.
we don't have it's not like a big team as such. It's just three people. And then we
Sometimes
just
that's the best team to have. It's just I've always said 3 to 5 people, and you'll be successful.
But Corey, another thing that also we should not forget, and I'm going to put this to podcasters. Look, this is my template is three-man team. If you have a nice following on Instagram or on Facebook, you can engage them. That's your way of making them feel they're part of the show. Go ahead and ask them, hey, what do you think about these shows? What do you want to see? What do you want me to interview? Who do you want me to interview? And they'll be like, okay, fine. I want you to interview so and so and so and so and whatever. So when you do that, and then they're like, oh, you know what? He listens to us. So remember the tribe you're creating? That's going to be your team. Now, maybe your sub team or the bigger, the audience, but you engage them in your topics, and they'll be happy
Right.
for that. And again, when you're doing a show, at the beginning of the show, you say, we're going to be talking about this topic. This topic was introduced or was suggested by so and so on my Facebook page, blah blah blah. It's a timestamp for that person, and guess what? That person is going to be your advertiser. They'll be like, hey, you know what? This person told the people that, hey, this was my show. This was the question I wanted
Right.
to ask, and they brought this person because I told them to. So this is a way of engaging and making that that other team be there.
Yeah, you've been dropping some jewels this evening, and I really appreciate it. And I hope people who are watching or who watch this really learn something, because I've talked about you engaging the audience and getting their input. I didn't think about actually giving them a shout out for helping you engage. And even that, like we learn at jobs and in school and these little things, or amongst your friends, that little shout out it can go a whole long way, and it means a whole lot to people, especially because you don't know, some people in their personal lives may not be getting the recognition for the things they do from friends and family and work and stuff. And that one little shout out, like you said, all of a sudden now they're just advertising you,
Right.
and
Like,
you
okay,
made them very loyal.
Corey, look, Everyone here, anyone who's listening here, has been to a club. I'm gonna suppose they've been to a club. Or before I get into my story, shout outs to my daughter who did this for me.
Oh, I was gonna get to that. I wasn't gonna let you get off of here without
Don't give me
without
that?
talking about that.
Okay. All right. Cool. We'll go. Okay. Now let's go back to that story. So, if anyone here has been to a club, has been to a conference, has been to a meeting, right? You have a bosses meeting and they're there, or you have been in a Zoom meeting. What if the person who's speaking, the DJ or your manager, or in the Zoom call, whoever is the host of the Zoom, mentions your name out of 100 people and you're in a club? How does that make you feel? That makes you
Oh,
feel good.
yeah.
And if you're in a partying mood, you're in the club, and then say, hey, shout out to so and so, for showing up, blah, blah, blah. We see you, you'll be like, yeah, same thing has the same effect has for when you shout out to somebody on a podcast. And then just let them know it has it. I mean, you feel great. So that's the same way you wanna do it to the people, advertise them. And hey, one person will tell the other person will tell the other person.
Man, I don't think people realize how much that really means, because we see in a lot of the groups, we see even in our own group, people, they're trying to figure out how they can be discovered. They're trying to figure out the magic formula for a successful podcast. We have plenty of blog posts and pundits, and I'll say pundits for this conversation, but gurus and out there that's telling you they have the secret formula for creating a successful podcast. And sometimes the things you need for a successful podcast are right there in front of you. They don't cost any money. It's just a matter of just recognizing and thinking out the box a little bit, and thinking, like you said, like, well, at the club and at the boss, if I shout out people that are helping me, that's why I always make sure people that are helping with the BPA get their just due. And I'm always telling them, like, don't worry about me. You get to go out there, shout yourself, like, toot your own horn, like, just do that, but also do that for the engagement. I'm going to start using that more, because I like I said, sitting here, I didn't realize, and I'm like, I want to curse, but I'm like, mother, like, why did I think of that? Because when I was a manager, I used to do that with my staff all the time, and I understood what that means. You got to give credit where credit's due. One,
Right.
Two, when somebody's helping you, you should recognize them, not only in personal, but publicly as well. It goes a long way. So
It's got that good feeling.
if you get anything from this conversation, please take that and run with it.
And another thing, and actually it's running on this week's episode. I got to talk to this artist. He's a speed artist. A lot of you know he's a speed artist, but he draws upside down, and then he does.
Is that the brother that had all the
Yeah.
Is he the one that had all the Instagram reels and all that stuff, where he would, and then he would turn it around? Oh, okay. Make sure y'all check out that episode.
Please do. Because here's a gem I'll drop for you guys. If you go listen to it, if you don't, hey. But this is what he told me. And I was asking him, hey, you painted Rihanna, and this got you the whole buzz. Did Rihanna get to you, or did you want Rihanna to kind of justify, not justify, but what is the word? Right word.
Recognize it.
Recognize it, and give you flowers for doing her so well. The guy told me, no, I'm not after Rihanna's validation. That's the word, validation. I'm not after Rihanna's validation. But if you look at Rihanna's Instagram posts, she probably has, I think she has 1 million plus followers. But he's interested in her followers, because guess what? Her followers will come to his page and be like, oh, wow, this guy painted Rihanna like this, upside down, and then twisted, and then we're like, oh, wow, this is it, And then after that, they're going to go check out more of his reels.
Right.
So this is how he got his followers. And I was like, why are people thinking that way? Because if most of the people will be like, oh yeah, I want to draw somebody, I want that person to see my drawing, so if I post it out there, they'll figure it out, out of their followers will find. No. I'm not interested in that person. I'm interested in the followers, the people who like that person, to come and see what I can do.
Right.
So I found that as a very, very good teaching from somebody who like I said, I just saw. By the way, I just saw him on the gram, and then I asked him if he wanted to come to my show, and he was like, "Hey, cool, I'm going to come to your show." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, let's go." And then guess what? He dropped something like that, which sets in my mind, and I'm gaining experience from that.
Yeah, that's definitely so for some people though, I think why they don't look at it that way is because they look at it as clout chasing. You're using somebody else's star or notoriety, and you're riding their coattails. And it's not, when thinking about what he said, it's not necessarily that. It's just saying, hey, I want you guys not. I can bring you more value. It's not that I want you to what is it I don't want recognition. I don't want the flowers from Brianna. I just want you guys to come see my artwork, and maybe there's some other artwork that'll resonate with you as well. And then all of a sudden now you have a strong following. And I think that's important for us to recognize as well, is you're actually probably really in the long run helping the followers more than you are yourself.
You're thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
Because if 100 of Rihanna's followers came and looked at it, right, and be like, "Wow, that's good," maybe he might get 20, and that's added more than what you had when you started off. And
I'll tell you this. In the podcasting space, if you can get those 20 people to listen to your podcast and be consistently listening, you're doing much better than a majority of podcasters. These are conversations people don't really want to talk about or have, but now you went from 60 to 80, per download, and then that just gives you something to build on. So,
right,
we have to have like a workshop on just thinking outside the box.
Yeah, man. And guess what? It's not. See, I'm doing the podcast, and I'm learning from the people who come to my podcast. I'm not a guru or anything. And guess what? When I come and drop these gems to you, I can back them up. And that's the whole beauty about being a podcaster. I can back it up by this guy, and he did this, and he told me this, and this is from their own words, and it's their experience. So all I'm doing is I'm validating their experience by bringing it out to you and telling you this is what's happened, and hey, check that out.
Right.
That's my form of advertising too. I tell you, hey, check out that conversation I had with this guy, and this is what he said. So if I'm going to say something and I need it validated, I use the person on my podcast to validate it as I learn myself, being a human being and being a podcaster.
And it just popped in my head because I was thinking about like how artists do it. Like like Rihanna will be on a Drake song, and this artist will be on that person's song, and that's how they capture the audience, right? But we actually do that in podcasting, and I don't understand why a lot of podcasters do not do this. But being on other people's platforms is how you also attract. And it seems like it used to be. I used to hear people talk about it all the time, right? Go on other people's podcasts, but you don't really see that anymore, and you don't see people thinking about doing that and saying, "Hey, I have a sports podcast. Let me go try to do a little press run and go on as many other sports podcasters and talk about my viewpoints, and maybe I can attract, like you said, if I can get 20 of their listeners, or if I could get 10 of their listeners to come over to mine, 10 times 10 is 100, right?
Right.
And I think that's very important for people to do. And
now that's the challenge. That's a very good challenge. Okay. Whoa, Corey, look.
I think a challenge would be to go on a podcast that's not in line. Well, some people might argue.
No, Corey.
Some people might argue, but like for instance, I could be into sports, but I could come on your podcast and I don't have to talk about sports. We could talk about other things. You get what I'm saying? Like I don't have to talk about the Knicks or the Mets or whatever team I'm following right now by just being on your podcast. Huh?
Is Bethany listening?
Is who?
Is Bethany listening here?
Oh shoot. Most likely. I'm looking at the comment section now, waiting for it.
Because you see, her podcast is more, it's women, it's an all women, so remember she even said something about it. You cannot just get into you gotta go listen to people's podcasts and then see if it's a fit for you. You cannot just go in and just get into a podcast. And that's the same thing with I, and I'm pretty sure other podcasters. And that's why you have a problem getting into into podcasting. Now, my issue with podcasting, uh, one has to be, does it fit with my podcast? Does it resonate with my podcast? How do I find the podcast, the podcast host, or how their show is going?
Mhm.
Does it fit in line with what my audience come in to listen to? Because you can go. I personally, um, if I want to do a podcast, vulgarity is not my thing. So you could be the best podcaster out there. I'm not gonna get into your podcast because once you start using vulgar words, I get kind of nervous. So it's one of those things. Yeah, it's true. I get nervous. So it's one of those things that I have to look at podcasters, and then also the age of my podcasters that I'm dealing with. That has a lot. There's a lot of things that you want to get into. So imagine you have your directory of podcasters, and you want to find out who works best with you. So you have to break it down and start looking at podcast after podcast after podcast. That's not an easy job to do. It's a lot, and so you'd have to say, okay, if I want to do that and get into people's podcasts, it'll probably take you about a month or two. You listen to two podcasts, up 2 to 3 podcasts a day, and then kind of figure out, does this make a fit for me? Is this working for me? Is this working for me? You will find them. But imagine the amount of work you have to put into to be able to do that, and how much time it's going to take away from you. So that's why I think it's a hindrance for some people to get into other people's podcasts
Mhm.
as easily as people say that, hey, you want to jump into my podcast? Yeah, okay, fine. I can jump into your podcast. Let me sit there. Okay, you're talking about sports. And what am I going to talk about? You know? So like Corey, you and I, we can have a sensible conversation. We can talk about a whole bunch of things back and forth based on the fact that we've had a couple of conversations here and there.
Mhm.
And then I felt, you felt the way you felt me, I felt you, and like, okay, fine, this guy's cool. We can have a conversation, and that's how it works. Oh, and I'll tell you another thing. We stalk each other. If I want to get if I want to get a guest to the show, most of the time I stalk them. I'll get onto your page and I'll stalk you. You put stuff, I respond. Put stuff, I
Bethany,
respond.
you're not alone now. 'Cause she talked about that. She's not alone anymore.
Yeah. So you stalk these people, and then they realize, oh, you're there. Oh, then they'll be like, who's this guy, Sambaza? Oh, okay, he has a podcast. Okay. Then one day you just say, hey, do you mind coming on my show for an interview? I like what you talk about on your show, or you talk about on your gram, and I think my show will do good with this coming series that I have, and people will respond, and that's how you get. Remember, you there's no way of introducing yourself. If you just came bam and said, hey, can you be on my show? Some people will be like, yeah. Some other people, they'll be like, I don't know about that.
I don't
How do
know
I know?
you. I don't know who you are. Well, I think I do agree there should be some kind of vetting process, and I think that's where some podcasters fail is they don't have a vetting process. They just accept anybody, and the content reflects that. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that there aren't some great conversations or people don't have a great episode doing that, but you do need to make sure that you are in line with the brand. Your brand is in line with their brand, and make sure you're attracting the right listeners to your podcast because it's also demoralizing if you get 1,000 podcast listens on this episode and all of a sudden it goes from 1,000 to 10, right? You'd be like, what did I do wrong? And sometimes it might just be that you went on this podcast, people went to come check you out, realize that you're not for them, and then they just went on about their way. And you're personally not, you don't have any data or context behind that saying what happened. So I think vetting and you don't know, you also want to vet because you don't know where people stand on certain issues, and you don't want that kind of heat. So I get it. But let's start winding down. We dropped a lot
Yeah.
of gems. It's been a great conversation. Let's get into your backdrop real quick because I know you tried to do
Oh,
it earlier, and I wasn't gonna let you get off of here without talking about it. But let's talk about that real quick. You want to tell everybody what it is?
Oh yeah, so normally I usually have a background here, and I have 2 T-shirts for Sambaza that we usually sell on the web page. But I wanted my daughter to. She does a lot of paintings here and there, so I told her, why don't you make something for me for the background, and then I can start using it as a new look for the Sambaza podcast. So she did that for me, and I'm glad to say she's probably following my footsteps as a retired artist or painter. And hey, shout outs to her, Steph. This is good, and I love it. So that's what I wanted
It's
to let you
another
know.
out the box thing. You can do things like that too when you're podcasting, especially if you have a video component where you
She's
can,
part of the team now.
yeah. So you can bring in the artist or whatever. I might actually talk to my son. He's an artist too, but he's not into painting. That's one thing he told me he's not into. But I'm gonna twist his arm.
Hey, anything you can put on the background.
Yeah, because this is starting to get a little old. but
Yeah, that's getting old.
real quick, so I always ask everybody who comes on here, what does it mean for you to be a Black podcaster and a part of the Black Podcasters Association?
Wow, this is really cool because let me see. I get to be amongst a good group of people that actually a select amount of people, great people, and they have a lot of resources and they have a lot of information, and they form the base of my tribe before I get out there. So when I go out there and I say I'm a member of the Black Podcasters Association, they're like, "Oh, okay, cool. You come from a great pedigree, a group of people that know what they are about and what they're doing," and that also propels me to have a standing in the podcasting world. And I'm glad that I met you to be able to have gotten me into this space, all the way from Clubhouse to here. And look at where we started from and where we are now, and it means a lot. It means a great big deal for me, especially from where I'm from. And I don't know where I'm heading to, but I think I'm heading. Sky's the limit, right? That's what they say.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
mean, it means a lot to me, man, when I hear you guys say that, because it's been a labor of love and a lot of hard work, and my own
Yeah.
journey through being imposter syndrome and understanding, is this working? Is this what is this what the hell am I doing? Just plenty mornings woke up, I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this to myself? So I really appreciate that. It means a whole lot. What's the next year? What's upcoming for Sambaza Podcast? What can people
Oh,
expect when they check you out over the next couple of months? What can they expect from you?
so we're doing some experimenting right now. So I wanted to do this issue. I was calling it people that interest me in the African realm, and also try to get some people who, people who are striving to make goals, to make things work in the society.
Mm-hmm.
So that interests me. So I've got a couple of people, and then I also want to do. There's a show that we're trying to work on, a podcasting series that we want to work on. People with the apps, apps that make things work out and stuff like that. If you have any, just recommend for me that I can have a word with. And yeah, that's what's coming up. And it's more, they're more fun topics that I'm thinking about, social topics that are going to come up about. One more thing I really want to do, and I keep missing it every year, is this Kwanzaa festival. I try to get to figure out how to do a series about the origins and what it is now, what it means to African Americans, and then what it means to us Africans. Because I'll be honest with you, I haven't. Okay, not ignorance, but I know it's there, but I really don't have a clue about it. And
Don't worry, a lot of us don't either. So
so, so I may need help, getting towards the end of the year and do it, because I've missed it for the last 2 years, and I've always wanted to do it. So I guess maybe people from the Podcasters Association can reach out to me, and then we can do something like that.
that's what it's there for. So yeah.
Right, right.
Um, I had a question, and I just went blank on a question,
Come on,
man.
hey, you can't go blank, man. You gotta,
Not live.
you gotta be rolling. You gotta be
We're not
rolling.
editing this. I can't just go in and edit and make and seam it up so it doesn't look like I did it. See, guys, we're all human. Man, I really appreciate you having you here. I look forward to it. I definitely want to work more on the bridging the gap portion. I've talked to you about that before, and the conversation you guys had at the Afros and Audio Festival, it like struck a chord in me. Like just listening to your stories and you guys discuss, coming here and the culture shock, as well as just dealing with, unfortunately, the prejudices and the biases, that happen as well. And I was just like, this is an opportunity. I don't think we've had an opportunity in recent times where we can use a platform like this to really dispel a lot of those things, that white supremacy and all that stuff. So I really would love to build on that in the future. And oh, I know what I wanted to tell you. On the app
Okay.
part, we have Anna Deshawn. She's in the group. She's launching her Cube app for podcasters,
Okay.
by Biopic and the LGBTQ community as well. And she's a Black founder, and she's working on her app right now. So she's in the group, so you can reach out to her. I'll connect you guys if you need me to, but definitely check her out. I might have a couple other people because that's what I also do. I do web dev, so um, I'll reach
See.
out to my network and let them know. But Sambaza, how can people find you? Let's talk about that real quick. I can't end this without
Oh,
giving people opportunities to reach out to you.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's not forget that. They'll be like, where do you find this guy? Okay. Let's see. Sambaza Podcast is gonna
Oh,
be it's Apple,
real
right?
quick,
It's all
sorry,
over.
don't mean to interrupt you, but Bethany said Akila Thompson, who we're having this Tuesday come into the group to do a workshop with us, is also creating an app, and she deals with the SEO space. I don't know if that's what her app is for, but I know she deals in the SEO space, so I can connect you with her as well. So
All right.
all right,
So
sorry about that.
no. It's good interruption. I mean, it makes everything flow, and it's not like I'm just mono talking, like blah 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 blah, and
Yeah,
then you're like, oh yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So there's a chat going on over there. Okay, good. I actually saw it as well. So we're on Apple, Google, um, wherever you can find your podcast. We're everywhere, and I'm also. Oh, you can buy me a coffee if you want to. I do accept coffee, and
is that at Sambaza as well, or
you go to buy me a coffee, and then it's a hashtag Sambaza, and
okay?
then you can find me there, and then you can buy me a coffee. We do sell T-shirts, but I'm really slowly trying to get there and try to advertise via T-shirts, and see if I can make a brand out of that. Other than that, just go ahead to Apple, give me a 5-star review whenever you listen to my podcast over there. If you're a Google person, go ahead and listen to it on Google. I actually usually leave a Linktree app to go there. Facebook, I'm on Facebook. You can go to check on Facebook and then like my Facebook. Yeah, at Sambaza Podcast. Once you like it there, then whatever comes on, you'll get it. But Instagram is where I actually get more traction. I'll
Got you
talk to
there
people.
too.
Yeah. So
You got
that's where
you got to get on that Twitter space, man. I've been having a lot of fun on there.
No, I am
I
on
know you're
Twitter,
on
by
there,
the way.
but
No, I am on Twitter. Okay, I'm going by it's Instagram, then Twitter, and then Facebook. But Facebook is linked with Instagram, so whatever goes on Instagram
it goes onto your
goes down
Facebook.
onto
Yeah.
Facebook. So they kind of match. And also one more thing, I'm going to try to do that project. Remember, we're talking about that project of the podcasters, African podcasters, and then trying to see what they say. But it wasn't really African podcast. This is going to be something like this, but it's going to be on YouTube. I'm still thinking about how I'm going to do it, but like remember when you're talking about bridging the gap?
Yes.
I got to make myself known. So somehow a YouTube channel and then TikTok might help. Bringing in more people. But I really okay. One thing I'm going to leave people with this, and this is me, and I think there are other couple of podcasters that are out there to end this show. My tribe is my tribe. The most important thing to me is to make sure if I have 20 people, let those 20 people come back to my show and listen to my show every single day. I'd rather have 20 people than have 100 today, 10 tomorrow, 5. And that's the most important thing. 20 is good for me just to keep going. I'm happy with you just coming in, listening, and then you know who I am and keeping it like that. If I get 100, 100,000, a million, that's fine. But I need to know how to keep those million people in my space all the time. So therefore, if I keep my 20 now, I'm learning to keep my 20 now. Don't start trying to reach to 100 subscribers or 100 followers and say, oh, you know what, I want to keep more and more. There's a way you can feed the beast in a more better way than to rush like that. Your cholesterol, your heart rate will go up, and your things things of that
You got
matter.
to you
So
got to you got to
yeah,
scale. It's like building a business. You got to scale so that you can handle it, and then you just keep working in increments once you get to a certain portion. So yeah.
trust the process.
Trust the process. That's always a good piece of advice.
Yeah.
And also join the blackpodcastersassociation.com and become a part of our wonderful community. But Sambaza, thank you for being here, bro. We're going to connect even more. We're going to try to do some big things this year, and I'll definitely want you and your tribe a part of that as well. Thank everyone for joining us. Again, make sure you check out Sambaza Podcast on the whatever platform you're on most of the major platforms, correct?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then go out to Instagram. I'll put it up again. His Sambaza at Sambaza Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, as well as Twitter. Support it. Check out the episodes. You got some great episodes. And thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And I look forward to seeing the new project. And hopefully this will help get that project going forward, since this is going to be on YouTube as well. But I really appreciate you being here. And if you guys are interested, thank you for checking out the Spotlight. Make sure you tune into our next show every Sunday, or our next show, or every Sunday at 7 p.m. Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube. So make sure you tap the notification bell and subscribe to stay notified. And if you haven't become a member of the Black Podcasters Association, stop playing and go to the blackpodcastersassociation.com right now for the month of March. Again, thanks to Women of Color Podcasters, you can get your first month free. That will be ending soon. It's for a limited time. It is worth it. It's a great value, and we want you there. We want to learn more about you and your podcast. So again, thank you, Sambaza. My name's Corey Gums. I've been your host tonight. Have a good night, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Good night, guys.